Welcome to today's show. I'm Brenda Bates, Medicine Woman, and this is Medicine Women Reveal. With me is
Jen Toffel, Medicine Woman.
And we have an amazing day happening. And with us is an amazing author, William Whitecloud, author of Australia's #1 best-selling metaphysical book, The Magician's Way. Is also an internationally acclaimed speaker and presenter who has been instrumental in changing thousands of lives across the world. He has created powerful techniques for self-transformation, which he has used to transform his own circumstances from terminal illness and suffering to living a magical, fulfilling life, and now makes it his life's work to teach the practical tools of magic to people everywhere. I am so excited to have him here.
This is such an honor to have him as a guest on our show.
So welcome, William Whitecloud. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brenda and Jen. It's fabulous to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well,
and Brenda, good to be talking to a Facebook friend.
Yes.
And I'm following you on Twitter.
So we're very excited that you're here with us, and we have a lot of questions. The main question we put out to Twitter was, what is the Hitler effect? We just want to jump right in. It was an incredible book. We really enjoyed it.
It's so well written. It's exciting. The journey within, and it's an exciting journey. It's actually a page turner, and it's great, and it's so exciting to read, and what happens to actually put the language that we use into a story of this man's life is just, it was great to read.
So if you have an actually specific question you would like to start with, we would like to, honor that first. But, there's just a ton of questions. Where to begin?
Did you want to? Do you want me to address the Hitler effect?
Sure. Yes. Why don't you start doing that one, because that one was very intriguing.
Yeah. Well, it can sound very ominous, the Hitler effect, but in the book, actually, it's just the way one of the characters illustrates a creative dynamic, and a dysfunctional creative dynamic, actually, that generally is the first relationship with manifesting and creating that people have with their personal power, because one of the first things you learn is that your focus creates reality, which is quite correct. But it's kind of like a half-truth, if that's all you know. And a lot of people just think that, well, if they have a vision board and if they have a vision and they think pure thoughts or good thoughts or imagine certain things about how they want their life to be, or specific things that they want in their life, those things will just flow to them automatically, because what you picture in your mind is what you create in your life and in your reality. And as I say, this is a half-truth, because your focus does create your reality, and the pictures that your imagination, that your subconscious, your spirit, whatever your language for it is, that creative aspect of yourself that creates your reality, whatever picture it does get actually is what it creates. And I've proved this over and over again in my own life and with thousands of people that I work with. But the thing is that, see, Hitler's a good example, and it's obviously a very supercharged example, and an extreme example, but nevertheless, extreme examples are always good illustrations, because you see everything in them so clearly. And with Hitler, what you see is someone who lusted after power and created this whole machine that set out to conquer the world. And, initially he had very good success. He was very successful and swiftly created this, power base that he sought. But the thing is, it's a well-documented fact. It's just historical fact that his power-mongering was driven by a deep sense of inferiority and powerlessness. And that's what underlay it. And that was his motivation. And you see, the thing is, the more he power-mongered, the more power he put into where he was really coming from, which was his powerlessness and his shame and his worthlessness. And in the end, that's what won over. I mean, he was utterly and absolutely crushed and annihilated. And so that's what the character in the book uses in the illustration to demonstrate this effect, which we're all subject to when we begin creating, because we just think, oh, well, what haven't we got? We haven't got money, so let's imagine lots of money. We're in a bad relationship, let's imagine love or whatever it is. And what you find is we're compensating the way people typically set out to create and continue to create, to be honest, is actually compensating for their beliefs of limitation and separation, which have created their realities, which they're trying to fix. And by so doing, are just reinforcing those beliefs. And people can wonder, and I know, because I work with a lot of people trying to use these principles, and they either have a struggle using them, sometimes they don't work, and sometimes people even go backwards. And they wonder, they ask me, why is this happening? And then you've got to show them where they're really coming from, and what messages, where the power is in their consciousness, what message their subconscious or their imagination is getting, and as a consequence, what it's creating. It's very self-evident. You can look at anybody's life and what's going on in their life, and you know what picture their subconscious is getting, because it's obvious in what's manifesting. And so, the important thing about creative development, learning to manifest, learning to heal, and live in line with your highest potential, your highest destiny, you've got to learn self-awareness and know what your dysfunctional drives are, and take the power out of that, and learn what your soul drive is, and then put the power in that, and come to what actually really matters to you and what you love, so that you can have sustainable momentum in your life, and live your joy, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that.
So thank you for explaining that. And yes, it makes sense from the work that we do. We talk about you've got to get to the core. You've got to get to your core beliefs, because then that's what's going to be reflected out. And so this is other language.
I like the way that you use the word magic. So the question then would be, you refer to your work as magic. What do you mean by that?
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to explain that, because, again, it's another word that's highly charged in some cases, that people can have a lot of tension around, because there are all kinds of connotations that are associated with it, and satanic connotations in the extreme, and negative connotations. But I'm obviously not talking about stage magic straight away. We can rule that out, and I'm also not talking about occult magic. It's not. I actually don't know anything about that, and I use magic almost as a metaphor. But when I talk about magic, I mean, I think anybody can relate to the term, because when things go well in our life and they turn out brilliantly, and they turn out in surprising ways, and come about in ways that we never expected, and almost like miraculously, or even miraculously, we just say, gee, that was magic, that was magical. And so when I talk about magic, I'm talking about living a life in that way, that's your experience, that's your sustainable, constant, permanent way of life, or experience of life. Well, way of life and experience of life is that it happens like that for you. You live like that, and it's brilliant. But beyond that also, the way we tend to think of ourselves, typically in the West, is we think of ourselves very mechanically, very materialistically, that we're these bodies, that we're these brains, and that we're going to do as well in life as we can cope with what we can cope physically and mentally, like what we can compute with our brains, and how much we can learn, and understanding, and whatever control we can come to in life. And that's going to be the sum total of how well we will do in life, how well we'll cope with life. But we also, you medicine women, and me, and probably most people listening, know that there's more to it, that there's spirit, that we have a spirit, we have a creative spirit. And not only, to say we have a creative spirit is even wrong, because it implies like there's this, we own this little portion of magical juice or something. But actually, what we are is pure creative spirit. What the whole universe is pure creative spirit, and we are that. We are that, and we are pure creative spirit, connected to everything through all time and space. And that's the biggest thing going for us. If we can get out of the way, connect with with it and rely on it to, lead us along the path of our highest good, our highest potential, our highest destiny. And that's what magic is relying on a force that's actually extra beyond our rational and physical strengths and forces that we oftentimes don't even understand, don't have an understanding of, but there's this higher force that can come in and create circumstances that can create situations, coincidences, synergies, attract resources to us, attract end results, and that's what I refer to as magic. But if you define magic just simply like a stage magician, you see an end result, but you don't see all the steps in the process that create that end result. And so too, we live magically. It's the same. We are self-involved in what we create, but we don't control every single step. There are other steps that happen invisibly that then make for this magical, brilliant end result.
I really enjoyed the example of the magician. So
how did you get drawn into magic, as you call it?
Well, it's like often the way a lot of people often do get drawn into it. I got drawn into it through a life crisis, midlife crisis. I was actually quite young, relatively, when it happened. But I was very sick for 10 years, and I mean, I'm talking really sick. And especially in the end, I was on my deathbed, and I was receiving deathbed counseling, and I was in a very bad way. And the thing about that illness was that in 10 years, not one single healthcare practitioner, whether they were clinical, whether they were alternative or complementary healthcare practitioners, I mean, I was seeing professors at universities, and nobody, psychiatrists, psychologists, nobody knew what was wrong with me. They all agreed I was in a terrible way. But I mean, it's extraordinary because I know other people that have been sick, and I've been sick other times, and usually everybody's got an opinion about what's wrong with you. With this, nobody knew nothing. Nobody would hazard a guess. And so I was just, in the end on my deathbed, and I met a man one day, and a young man, a very young, healthy man, who told me he knew what was wrong with me. Now, he was just an ordinary, he wasn't a doctor or healthcare, healer or anything like that. He was just a citizen, and he told me he knew what was wrong with me. And not only did he tell me what was wrong with me, he knew what's wrong with me, he told me he knew what the cure was. Oh. And he told me that the cure, and that if I followed his cure, I would get, his prescription, I would get better very quickly. And he told me that what I had to do was start eating red meat again, which I'd long ago stopped doing. He said I had to have white wine with my meals, and I had to drink some cups of coffee every day, and also smoke a few cigarettes every day. Now,
that's different.
It's funny in retrospect, but when he told me this, it wasn't good news. It wasn't funny because, I mean, of all the people in 10 years that saw me, that none of them would agree on what was wrong with me, but all of them would have agreed that this was just absolute nonsense and was in fact a prescription for suicide. And but anyway, I just thought, what the hell? I had nothing to lose, and I just, I've been so desperate to get well and to survive and all of that, and I just let go of that. I just think, what the hell? I'm just going to go out enjoying myself. I'm going to give this a go. And I did, and within days I started, I came back. I was just so much better, so quickly. I would say that it's literally true that within a couple of days of doing that, I would have come back about 90%. And then, gaining the weight and all that, and, just being fully restored took a couple of months after that.
Wow.
So it was an extraordinary experience. And, the thing is, if you've been sick for 10 years and deathly ill, you think that if they ever find out what's wrong with you and they got some cure or something, it's going to take years for you to rehabilitate. But I was back in days, and so it was an extraordinary experience that was like my blinding light on the road to Damascus kind of thing. And the thing, Jen and Brenda, the thing about it is that I never, ever believed there was any efficacy in the actual substances that he had prescribed, you know, the meat and the nicotine and whatever. That never occurred to me. I never believed that. The thing that struck me, and it was a new thought because I grew up in the bush in Africa, and I was void of any ideas of personal development and manifesting new thought knowledge or new age knowledge or anything. I was an absolute virgin to all of this. I knew nothing, but it struck me that there must be some way in which you paid attention, in which you focused, that creates your reality. Because I had been focused on my health and especially focused on being sick and trying to survive, and you know, really focused on the idea that nobody could help me, that I was powerless and all of that, and that had just, you know, been reinforced and been more strongly mirrored in my life and my life experience. And then when I just let go of that preoccupation and, you know, just focused on something else, everything just changed. But I mean, instantly. It was like, you know, what they call instant karma. I've heard that saying before, and I thought, you know, this is like instant karma. This must be what that means. And, you know, I then determined, I was so blown away by this kind of what I thought was a discovery. I didn't even think that anybody on earth most probably knew about what I just discovered for myself there. But I determined there and then, I made an intention to learn more about, because I didn't know how it worked, I just knew that there's some way in which your focus creates reality, but I wanted to learn how it worked and how you could practically apply that, well, how I could practically apply it anyway, to creating the opposite of what I've created over the last 10 years. And so, you know, when you have that powerful experience and I think create that powerful realization and insight and belief, coupled with a powerful intention to learn, I've very quickly attracted the insights, the lessons, the teachers as well, the external teachers and the readings that then put all the pieces together for me that explained it, that I was very quickly able then to work this thing, to work this principle, and that's how I got into magic. And, you know, very quickly, because of how quickly I learned it and got it together and changed, you know, the direction of my life so powerfully, then other people were attracted to me to help them understand, you know, what it was all about. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, through teachings and writings and whatever.
Wow. That's impressive. I have a lot more questions, but we're going to take a small little break. I can hear some viewers going, oh, I need to try that cure, taking some wine, cigarettes, and meat. But part of me wonders if you knew that because you were desperate at the time, so a lot of times you're just focusing on your pain, and somebody comes along and says, try this, and you go, okay, what the hell? As you're focusing on it, did you realize that was a diversion? And when, how long were you doing it? You said it was just like a few days, but did the epiphany come to you, the great awareness come to you during that time, or was it afterwards?
Well, it wasn't in the first few days. It was once I had recovered for a little while and thought about things, you know, and thinking about things, because at the same time, you know, I was questioning the process of it and whether, you know, there actually was any efficacy in the meat and the nicotine and the wine and whatever, you know. And, there was a debate amongst people I knew and that I was friends with, and people who were saying, well, you know, obviously my body was alkaline and stuff that I was taking was acidic and it had rebalanced my body and that. But I mean, you know, part of the process had been that I'd been turned inside out and studied, and, you know, those balances and that were all checked out as part of the process in diagnosing what was wrong with me. So I don't know, but, you know, just answering your question, it was a little time afterwards that I thought about it. And, you know, it's a really good point you make about that, about the nicotine and the the alcohol and all of that. Because subsequently I became ill at other times, you see, and thought, well, if I try that, maybe that's going to help, and it didn't, in that instance. It's not a formula, and nobody out there should try it unless it's relevant to them and true to them in whatever circumstance. But it's absolutely not a prescription and a formula. It just worked for me at that time in that instance and taught me that. And that that's all I care about. Is many people argue that even the conclusion I came to was the wrong conclusion, but I don't care, because I came to that conclusion, and it then led me to the studies that I undertook and the understandings that I came to, and those studies and those understandings and insights and the model that I developed and the premises that I developed to live my life by not only saved my life, but have put me on a track to living my heaven on earth at the very that by comparison, and it's all absolutely strictly through the insights that I came to, and so that's all I care about, and that's what's important, is that the idea of that your focus creates your reality, and then how the deeper understandings of how you actually work that to brilliant effect is the name of the game for me.
Well, I appreciate you telling us that. And so during that time of, basically your focus was redirected. No longer was it focusing on the illness, but then as you started to have that self-awareness, what is important? If somebody wanted, yes, they could pick up the book, but what would be the reason to come to check you out on the principles and help follow your way of how you came to success? What could you give them?
You're saying what would the benefit of coming to me and checking me out?
Yes.
And check. Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the exact benefit, and it'll benefit everyone. The thing about it, our journey, our life's journey, is just simply this: is that we are born into. Are we still together?
Yes, we're here.
Hello? Yeah. Now I heard some flashing and squawking on my end, but the point is that it's a very relevant question. It's the best question you could ever ask, in fact, because it addresses centrally what we're about and what our journey here on Earth is. And the thing is I was saying earlier, we're all pure creative spirits, connected to everything through all time and space. But within that, there's a paradox. Even though we're one with everything, we also have a very unique essence. We have a very unique expression. And we've all come here to express something on planet Earth, to have an experience of life. And to do that, we actually have to create a sense of individual existence, so that we can have this individual experience. And through that vehicle, express our divinity, express our true nature and purpose, and our expression. But the thing is for pure creative spirit, connected to everything through time and space, to actually be here, we have to create separation. And we have to create a vehicle, which first of all is our body and our minds and our emotions and our etheric body, etc. But also within that, we have to create an actual sense of separation, because it's also scientifically documented and well understood, I think, through every culture, and that, and especially now scientifically, that even when a baby is born, it doesn't even know that it's separate from its mother, that it's not its mother, never mind the rest of the world. So we've got to individuate, we've got to become separate, and we go through this individuation process which we actually achieve by creating beliefs, and the beliefs of limitation, like beliefs I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect, I'm not powerful, I'm not capable, I don't have the capacity, whatever the beliefs are, and they also we create separation and we create limitation. And we really identify with those. Hence we talk about ourselves as having an identity and a personality. And they're very much born of these notions that were designed to make us separate. But the sort of double-edged sword in all of that, the problem with it, all of that is now we have a vehicle, now we have a sense of individual existence, but we also have all of these beliefs of limitation and separation, which we then now try to compensate for, as if that's what our life's about. And if you look at, if you're able to analyze a person's life and what they're about, you'll see very clearly that typically the average person's life is about compensating for their beliefs, about compensating for their sense of limitation and separation, which is an illusion. It's an illusory focus in life. It's an illusory orientation. It has nothing to do with who you are, what you're really about. And so you ask me what's the benefit of my work is just simply that. It's an ability to end that cycle, to see through that cycle, see through the dynamics, those dysfunctional dynamics, and stop acting in favor of those and come to your heart, which means that inside of you there's something much deeper, and I don't know if that's what you mean by core. There's a core to you that's much deeper, authentic. That's what your life is really about, who you really are about, and included in that are all the true talents, gifts, abilities that support that. And then getting on with that, and that if you get onto that tangent, if you come back to that, I've just described the hero's journey, in fact, is just coming back to yourself, coming back to your treasure, and becoming involved in what, is your greatness, basically. And the quality of life, the experience of life is vastly different, is the improvement in your life is unbelievable. And so if anyone wants to come to who they really are and what's highest in them, and have an experience of that and living out of that, then this work is for them.
Interesting.
Right, so it's like, almost like we're all living in an identity crisis and we don't even know it on some level.
So is that...
No, absolutely. And it's a struggle, because you first of all working on... I was at a seminar once, and it was really interesting because it was a motivational seminar, and it's not kind of my bag. But the facilitator, it was there were thousands of people in the audience, and the facilitator said, who here has had goals and ambitions and plans and, dreams and whatever, that you were going to go for, and that you achieved those, and then you went, well, what was that about? I'm still not happy. And
exactly.
Everybody put up their hands. Everybody.
Right.
Everybody put up their hand. And, and so the thing about that is that what some people might infer from that is that having ambition and whatever is wrong, and it's egoic and it gets you nowhere. But it's not true. It's just that you've got the wrong ambition. that when you operate egoically and you're just operating out of, and your desires are based on trying to end your limitation, end your sense of separation, that whatever you achieve isn't going to satisfy you. So it's a non-satisfying orientation, but it's also a struggling orientation, because, it's focused on beliefs, and those beliefs keep reinforcing themselves. So, if you're struggling against your lack of worth keeps imposing on you, no matter what you do, no matter how approval-seeking your behavior is or whatever. There's no respite. But when you abandon that and you become involved in what you're truly about, I often use the analogy of gardening. People who love gardening, that's what they love. They never go backwards. That garden, every season, gains momentum, gets more and more beautiful, and with every spring, the blossoms are just more and more beautiful and more colorful, and it just grows and grows and grows. and it does that effortlessly, and the gardener tends their garden with joy and receives such joy out of it. And our lives can be like that.
That sounds wonderful. So you just basically explain the incomplete self and the complete self, and you have tools that help you transform from the incomplete to the complete. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Because look, that's the bottom line of what it's about. I believe, is self-actualization. Is because to create our identities and our individual sense of existence, you have to create a sense of separation, and so there's a sense then that you're incomplete, and whatever you do in favor of your sense of incompleteness will always just make you feel incomplete, will always reinforce to you that you're incomplete. I mean, it's kind of that anybody's trying to, people that are just like looking for peace, and they just never get enough peace. But when that's not your preoccupation anymore, whatever your sense of separation is, when you're just not lending energy to that, and you are identified with your inherent connection to everything, and you have a self definition of being connected, then everything everything changes, and it's based on that. At its most absolute, the foundation of, I would say, spirituality, and by that I mean, our connected way of being in the world, and a positive relationship with us, the most positive relationship with ourselves and everything that we're a part of, is based on connection of oneness and connectedness. And if you look at the old traditions like shamanism and whatever, that is their foundation, the notion that everything is one. It's the most fundamental tenet of shamanism, is that everything is one. And you see, you can think of these old cultures and that as being superstitious and hocus pocus and what primitive and whatever, but actually and they do have elements of all of that are nonsense, but at their core, the essential premises and principles are profoundly, divinely, sacred, and have just an amazing integrity. And when you subscribe to them and apply them, then you enter into another world, another territory of transcendent being. Basically, you connect with your genius. You're out there in this place where your quality of life and emotional experience is really great, but also creatively speaking, your insights and your ability to make connections between things that you normally wouldn't make are totally heightened, and that's why we call it even the territory of the genius, because people like Einstein and entrepreneurs like Richard Branson and musicians and songwriters like Bono from U2, Nelson Mandela, politically, Mother Teresa, this is the territory that these people occupy, and they're not special. We can just as easily occupy this territory ourselves.
Sounds wonderful. We have to take a quick break, and we have a lot more questions, and we'll be back right after this, okay? And now we're back. We're having such a wonderful interview with William Whitecloud that, William, the next question that I have for you is, Jen, what would you say that is?
That's the Hermetic Philosophy. It's explained in the book, but we'd like to hear you explain it to our listeners.
Well, Hermetic philosophy is a strand of alchemy, and I consider myself very lucky to have come across this very early in my search. In fact, it was practically about the first thing that I bumped into once I made the intention to understand this idea that your focus creates your reality. And it's a strand of alchemy, and academics quite often refer to it as alchemy par excellence, as the ultimate alchemical model. And look, I mean, if we understand alchemy as a metaphor, we know that it's the art and the process of turning base metals into precious metals, most specifically anyway, most commonly lead into gold. And actually, that is really a metaphor for coming from our lower vibrations to our higher vibrations, because alchemy talks about vibration, and that lower, base metals have a lower vibration and precious metals have a higher vibration, and that we are vibration, and that we have lower vibrations and higher vibrations, and our lower vibrations, our ego, it's our identity, and it's this part of us that is rational and linear and relates to sees things compartmentalized and separation, and it's our notions of limitation and separation, and also our false sense of who we are and what we're about here. And then the higher is who we truly are, our creative spirit connected to everything through all time and space, and the higher essence of who we are and what we seek to express, what our purpose is in life, and the gifts, talents, and abilities that truly serve that, and that is our goal. That is our higher self, and that is our goal. And it's a model. Hermetic philosophy is a philosophy which encompasses that idea basically, but it also gives very powerful techniques for allowing one, or facilitating one, should I say, in raising one's vibration, in shifting, creating, in transforming and creating a shift from your egoic identity to your soul identity and soul orientation. And they just are. They're incredibly powerful processes. And what I love about it is that it's not mechanical, and it doesn't rely on what you're able to do with your body and your mind and your memory or self-discipline and will and whatever. It really is a model for connecting with spirit and handing over to spirit and allowing spirit to conduct that transformation, because we sure as hell can't. I mean, Einstein famously said that a mind that creates a problem can't solve the problem. And that is so true. The mind, the part of our mind that created our identity and our ego, is not the part of us that's going to help us escape from it, but it's what everyone's basically trying to use. And so Hermetic philosophy is beautiful because it doesn't rely on that. It relies on another side of ourselves, and it does. It facilitates a sublime shift, actually. It's beautiful stuff, Hermetic philosophy. I mean, it's very simple. There's a treatise on Hermetic philosophy called the Kabbalion. It's a very thin book. There's not a lot to it, but I mean, there's a lot to practicing it, actually.
Well, we appreciate that. There's so many more questions we could be asking you, but we do have someone that would like to ask a question. I'm not sure, what it is. So, Jen, if you wouldn't mind bringing in caller 562, and we will see what the question is.
Okay. All right, caller, you are on the air with us, so if you have your question
For William Whitecloud, then go right ahead.
Yes. Well, my question is, why does it take so long? I mean, we create our own reality, and I've been studying this for 8 years now. I mean, I started with the test material, and then looked up with time, everybody started going out to awakening to this idea where I was, had this idea and this concept down packed many years ago. But the problem that I'm having the trouble with is, yes, I create my own reality. I know that I'm supposed to feel the vibration that I want to be in. But where I'm having trouble with the lapse of time as to when it's happening. Like, for instance, something simple, like, what mostly people call about to these shows would be either relationship or employment. And so we know that we create that situation, but why does it take so long, the lapse of time, when you are creating something and you're in a positive vibration for so long? What does it take so long to manifest?
It doesn't. I mean, that's the right answer. It doesn't. It actually doesn't. It can, but it doesn't. I mean, it's not a statement of fact that it takes a long time. I've found that when things happen for me, when I met my wife and created it was a creation, because I was in a terrible situation in terms of my love life and whatever, and I actually wanted to change that. And when I made the intention to change it, it actually happened very quickly. And as I was saying, what I found out with a 10-year illness, I recovered it from it very quickly. And even economic things, there's things that have happened for me financially that have happened very quickly. So, to say that it takes a long time, you can say, well, that's true for me. It took me a long time, or it never happened. And this is what I said, I think, earlier in the show, is that the thing is that when people hear about, well, that you can create whatever you want, and so if you imagine it, and there's all kinds of myths. One of the myths is that you have to even feel what you want to create, that you have to feel positively about it. Some of the greatest creations I've ever created, I did not feel good about. I never ever managed to actually believe that I could create them, or that I'd have them, or whatever. But belief has nothing to do with it, and feeling about it has nothing to do with it. It's something that you can do, and if it happens, it happens, but it's not essential. Many great creators have created amazing things, inventions, fortunes, whatever, works of art, without feeling good about themselves. Van Gogh, whose paintings now sell for hundreds of millions of dollars, didn't feel good all the time he was painting, you see. So that's not a prerequisite, but it's this thing that I say is that when people find out that that you can create whatever you want, that we create our own reality, and therefore you can create whatever you want, and they begin creating and they begin visualizing it. I was saying this earlier, that what happens sometimes is it doesn't happen. They're visualizing and it doesn't happen. And or they do get it and then they lose it, they don't sustain it. Or I know a lot of people, and it happened to me in my life, where I've gone backwards. And I know people that have gone backwards. And the thing is this is the point I make, is that you have to have a deeper appreciation of these principles and understand what it is, to have the ability and the self-awareness to know what you're acting in favor of when you make your choices and when you visualize. Because if it's taking a long time or it's not happening, I can assure you that there's one thing that's happening in the consciousness is that you're stuck. It's a reflection of your own consciousness that you're someone who's not manifesting something that's taking a long time, and they're trying and they're trying. I mean, it's just a function of energy is not flowing, the energy is stuck. And the energy flows when you have, well, let's talk about what causes energy to be stuck. What causes energy to be stuck is when actually when you're focusing on something, and when you're focusing on an end result, that you've got to look at what is motivating that focus and that attention. Why do you want that? Is it your desperation? Is it I was just talking to someone just the other day, a self-development guru here in America, and they were telling me about a seminar that they led recently, and they surveyed the attendees about what they wanted to create. and then analyze what was motivating their desires. And that's in every case, whatever the audience, the participants said they wanted, and when they looked at it and broke it down, everyone could see that they were motivated by desperation, and you know, so their own sense of lack and limitation. And if that's what's motivating you, then that's the message that you're getting. Let me be very clear about this. Let's just talk about simplistically about money. That if you see a pile of gold in your mind, it's not what your creative spirit sees. It's not necessarily what your subconscious, your imagination sees, the part of you that creates. You in your mind see a pile of gold, but what your subconscious sees, the part of you that's creating, what that is looking for is where's that coming from, what's motivating that. And as I said, if it's limitation, if it's a sense of separation, if it's a sense of desperation, that is what's going to be picked up on, and that is what is going to be perpetuated and then reinforced. And so if you really, you know, the person who's going to begin, and you see this every time, the person that's going to begin flowing and moving powerfully into life, and you can see it happen so fast and so instantaneous. I see it all the time, is when people just let go of what they're desperate about and what they're hanging on to and what they believe they've got to have and whatever, and allow themselves then to flow to what's, you know, their true situation, what's true for them to have and to work towards and be involved in. And, you know, that's the best answer I can give. But I can also say that this is, you know, what I'm talking about here in my book, The Last Shaman. It's a book that is about this. It's about the wisdom. It's specifically about the wisdom that drives powerful creating. And one needs wisdom, because there's no wisdom in just, you know, there's not enough wisdom in just going, well, there's all these things I want, and now I'm going to imagine them, and that they should come to me. It just doesn't work like that. It works on a much deeper wisdom, which my new book, The Last Shaman, systematically addresses.
That sounds wonderful. Did that answer your question, my dear?
No, not really, because it doesn't, I mean, I understand in a way, but he doesn't really give the way to do it. So we would definitely have to read the book. Is that what I'm assuming? In order to get the tools to...
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sorry that I can't just in an instant give you the way to do it. I'm explaining the principle, but you know, the way to do it is an involved lesson that isn't suited to a 5-minute chat. And that's just the truth of it. I mean, it's not a quick fix. It's not a quick answer. There's some deep insights involved in this. It's it's like driving a car. You know, learning to drive a car is this is your human vehicle that you're learning to drive. So it's worth some lessons and an investment in understanding and learning to drive the vehicle. And it's just as one, you know, I couldn't right now teach someone over the phone in 5 minutes how to drive their car. It's more, but I can give them the principles. I can, you know, just say broadly what the principles are at work. But to then teach the person to actually drive the car or give them the manual to drive the car is a little more involved. And I really encourage you to be prepared to look a little more deeply at the subject, because it is that, and you know, it requires a deeper sense of awareness to drive your creative self powerfully.
So
I definitely agree with that.
okay.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the lesson.
Okay. Thank you, dear, for calling in. And William, we appreciate that you have been here. We have a lot more questions, but we do know that you have to go. So, again, how can... I'm sorry, what?
But sadly,
Yes, sadly.
Sadly, I have to go.
Before you go,
Before you go.
people want to learn these principles. You know, reading the book helps give them encouragement. It also
It's a great, I mean, it's a great journey as far as putting yourself into this main character, Mark's journey. I can see myself, it's the journey within, and so the book explains that.
So how do people contact you to further learn these principles? Do you have workshops, seminars? How can they locate you to find out more information?
Well, I'll just say very quickly, you know, that the Last Shaman is a systematic lesson through that journey, is a systematic lesson in what we've been talking about now, but also my website, williamwhitecloud.com, you know, people, everyone should visit that, especially if they're interested in this subject, and there you'll learn more about the books. There's even free chapters on the books, and also all the resources that are offered, the products and resources, and even free products that can help people, you know, be on this path, this wonderful path of magic and alchemy.
And so that was williamwhitecloud.com?
WilliamWhitecloud.com, yes.
Well, I appreciate it. Everybody, please start to understand and appreciate your life, your vehicle that you're driving, and the best way to do it is start to read The Last Shaman. It can inspire you to want to achieve more. So, William, thank you
Thank you so much for your time.
So much for you being here.
Thanks, Brenda and Jen. Really appreciate the conversation, I loved it. It was a great conversation. I do wish we had more time.
And hey, maybe if you want to come back sometime, we can do that, because we do have other radio stations that we do
that'll
things
be
on.
marvelous. I'll send you a copy of my other book, The Magician's Way, and we'll talk about that too.
That sounds wonderful, right up our alley.
Yes,
Thank you so much, William.
Thank you again so much.
And you stay blessed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Lots of love.
Okay, take care.
We're going to take a small break. When we come back, we will continue talking.